Introduction to fractions. What are fractions? Fractions simply tell us how many parts of a whole are there. Let's take for example this one whole circle that is divided into 4 equal parts. If we take one part out of the whole, in fractions, we express this one out of the 4 parts of the circle as 1/4. Now let's do another one. The circle is now divided into 8 equal parts. One part is shaded. The fraction of the shaded part is 1/8. Now you try. That is right. 4/8 of the circle is shaded. Another one. This time, we have 7 parts and 5 of them are shaded. In fraction, this is 5/7. Parts of a fraction. A fraction is made up of the numerator and the denominator. The number on the bottom of the fraction is called the denominator, and it indicates how many equal parts of the whole is divided into. The number on top of the fraction is called the numerator, and it indicates how many of the parts we have. Simplifying fractions. We can simplify a fraction by reducing it to its lowest term. That means to divide the numerator and denominator with their greatest common factor, or the GCF. In this example, we have 4/8. The GCF for the numerator, 4, and the denominator, 8, is 4. Hence, we divide both by 4. In doing so, we get 1/2 or 1/2 as the lowest or simplest term of the given fraction. We have simplified 4/8 into 1/2. Another example, 18/27. The GCF for 18 and 27 is 9. Upon dividing the numerator and denominator by the GCF, we get the simplified or reduced fraction, 2/3. Now your turn. Pause the video and answer the following. Play the video again to see the answers. Equivalent fractions. Fractions can be written in different ways without changing their values. These fractions that may look different yet have the same values are called equivalent fractions. You can produce many equivalent fractions by multiplying or dividing both the numerator and denominator by the same number. Let us see this example. By multiplying the numerator and denominator of this fraction by the same number, we can get an equivalent fraction. If we do it again, we get another equivalent fraction. 1/2, 2/4, 4/8 are equivalent fractions. How about if we divide the fraction? Let us start with 4/8 and divide its numerator and denominator by the same number. We get an equivalent fraction. Do it again, and we get another equivalent fraction. Again, by multiplying or dividing both the numerator and denominator of a fraction by the same number, we get equivalent fractions. Visually, it will look like this. Now, what if we are given several fractions and we are to check if they are equivalent? We will discuss 2 ways to find out if fractions are equivalent. First method is to reduce the fractions into their lowest terms. If their lowest terms are the same, the fractions are equivalent. Another way of checking if fractions are equivalent is by cross multiplication. Multiply the numerator of the first fraction with the denominator of the second fraction. Then, also multiply the numerator of the second fraction with the denominator of the first fraction. If the products are the same, the fractions are equivalent. Another example of cross multiplication. Another example of cross multiplication. Now, your turn. Pause the video and answer the following. Place a check mark to indicate that equivalent fractions and an X mark if the fractions are not equivalent. Play the video again to see the answers.
Comparing fractions. How do we know which fractions are larger or smaller? If fractions have the same denominators, we compare them by looking at their numerators. The one with the larger numerator is the one with the larger fraction. In this example, 7 over 9 is larger than 4 over 9 since 7 is larger than 4. But how about if the denominators are different? To compare fractions with different denominators, we can use cross multiplication and compare the cross products. In this example, we multiply the numerator of the first fraction with the denominator of the second fraction. We get the first cross product. Next, we multiply the numerator of the second fraction with the denominator of the first fraction. We get the second cross product. Then, we compare the cross products. If the cross products are equal, the fractions are equivalent. If the first cross product is larger, the first fraction is larger. If the second cross product is larger, the second fraction is larger. In our example, the first cross product is larger. Hence, the first fraction is larger. Here's another example. We do cross multiplication, we get cross products, then compare the cross product. The first product is larger. Again, the first fraction is the larger fraction. Now your turn. Compare the fractions and indicate which fraction is larger or if they are equivalent using these symbols. Pause the video and answer the following. Play the video again to see the answers. Types of fractions. There are 3 types of fractions: proper fraction, improper fraction, and mixed fraction. A proper fraction has a numerator that is less than its denominator. An improper fraction has a numerator that is greater or equal to the denominator, while the mixed fraction is a combination of a whole number and a proper fraction. Here are some examples of the different types of fractions. Converting fractions. In this lesson, we will learn how to convert improper fraction into mixed fraction and vice versa. We can use either of the 2 types of fractions to show the same amount. Converting one type to another will come in handy for the succeeding lessons. To convert improper fractions to mixed fractions, follow these steps. 1. Divide the numerator by the denominator. 2. Write down the whole number answer. 3. Write down any remainder above the denominator. Let us see an example. 7 over 4. We have to divide the numerator by the denominator. 7 divided by 4. The answer is 1, remainder 3. We write down the whole number answer and write down the remainder above the denominator. Improper fraction 7 over 4 in mixed fraction is 1 3/4. To convert mixed fractions into improper fractions, follow these steps. 1. Multiply the whole number part by the fraction's denominator. 2. Add the product to the numerator. 3. Write the result on top of the denominator. Let's see an example. 1 3/4. we multiply the whole number part by the fraction's denominator, 1 times 4. The answer is 4. Now we add the product to the numerator, 4 plus 3. The answer is 7. We now write the result 7 on top of the denominator, 4. The mixed fraction 1 3/4 is converted into the improper fraction 7/4 or 7 over 4. Now your turn. Convert the following improper fractions into mixed fractions. You may pause the video and answer the following. Play again the video to see the answers. Now convert the following mixed fractions into improper fractions. Addition of fractions. In adding fractions, we have to keep in mind the following. 1. Make sure that the denominators are the same. 2. Add the numerators, then put the answer over the common denominator. And 3. Simplify the fraction if needed. Let us see some examples. Example 1. Adding fractions with the same denominators. Since the fractions already have the same denominators, we just have to add the numerators. Then, we simplify the final answer. Example number 2, adding fractions with different denominators. As we have mentioned earlier, in order to add fractions, they must have the same denominators. So in order to make the denominators the same, we have to make use of the least common denominator or the LCD. The LCD of our fractions in this example is 6. Now, we have to change the fractions into their equivalent fraction to make their denominators the same as LCD. Then, we add the fractions and simplify. Example number 3, adding mixed fractions. First, we have to change the mixed fractions into improper fractions. Next, change the fractions into their equivalent fractions based on their LCD. We add the numerators, then we simplify. We also change it back to mixed fractions. Now you try. Pause the video and add the following fractions. Then play the video again to see the answers. Subtraction of fractions. In subtracting fractions, we have to keep in mind the following. 1. Make sure that the denominators are the same. 2. Subtract the second numerator from the first numerator and put the answer over the common denominator. 3. Simplify the fraction if needed. Let us see some examples. Example number 1. Subtracting fractions with the same denominators. Since the fractions already have the same denominators, we just have to do subtraction on the numerators. Then, simplify the final answer. Example number 2, subtracting fractions with different denominators. As we have mentioned earlier, in order to subtract fractions, they must have the same denominators. So in order to make the denominators the same, we have to make use of the least common denominator or the LCD. The LCD of the denominators 2 and 6 is 6. Now we have to change the fractions into their equivalent fraction to make their denominators the same as the LCD. Then we subtract and simplify. Example number 3. Subtracting mixed fractions. First, we have to change the mixed fractions into improper fractions. Next, we change the fractions into their equivalent fractions based on their LCD. Then, we subtract. Now you try. Pause the video and subtract the following fractions. Then, play the video again to see the answers. Multiplication of fractions. In multiplying fractions, we simply do the following. 1. Multiply the numerators. 2. Multiply the denominators. And 3. Simplify the fraction if needed. Example number 1. We simply multiply the numerator by the numerator and the denominator by the denominator. We get the answer and we simplify the final answer. Example number 2, we multiply a whole number to a fraction. We multiply the whole number to the numerator. And simplify. Example number 3, multiplying mixed fractions. First, we have to change the mixed fractions into improper fractions. Then, we multiply the numerators and multiply the denominators. We get an answer and change it back to mixed fractions and simplify. Now your turn. Multiply the following fractions. Pause the video and answer the following. Then, play the video again to see the answers. Division of fractions. In dividing fractions, we have to do the following. 1. Turn the second fraction upside down. This becomes its reciprocal. Then, multiply the first fraction by the reciprocal. And third, simplify the fraction if needed. Let's see some examples. Example 1. Dividing a fraction by a fraction. We change the second fraction into its reciprocal form and we multiply. Example number 2, we divide a whole number by a fraction. The whole number can take in the form of 5/1. We multiply the whole number to the numerator of the reciprocal. We change it to a mixed form. Example number 3, we divide a fraction by a whole number. The whole number will take the form 3/1 and we change it to its reciprocal, making it 1/3. We multiply, then we get the answer. Example number 4, we divide a mixed fraction by a mixed fraction. We first change them into improper fractions, then change the second fraction to its reciprocal, then multiply. Change it to mixed fraction. Now your turn. Divide the following fractions. Pause the video to answer, then play it again to see the answers.